Hi guys, it's Robbie and Jacob here from People's Resistance. Today we're talking to the excellent Iain Dalton, who's talking on behalf of himself and a group called Youth Fight for Jobs. Hello Iain, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, thanks for coming on, we appreciate it. So we first came across you a few weeks ago at a protest in Leeds that I think you organised and you spoke at. And we were just sort of wondering, how important is activism to you?
I think it's very important. I think if you're a person like me who thinks that the way society's run is not in the interest of ordinary people and that should be challenged, then building mass campaigns and mass movements of people is an integral part of trying to challenge that. Mobilising people to demand a better future for themselves is vital. If you're going to have a world running in the interest of ordinary people, then it has to be run by ordinary people. You know, it can't just be done by one person. It can't just be done by some secret group here and there. It's got to be done by, people getting together collectively and organising.
Cool,
Sweet.
Fantastic, yeah.
So tell us more about Youth Fight for Jobs. That's an organisation you're a part of.
Yeah, I'm the Yorkshire organiser of Youth Fight for Jobs. We've been going since 2009 after kind of youth unemployment shot up massively that year, and we had involvement of young Socialist Party members, the PTS Young Members Network and other young trade unionists. We've done a lot of protests against Workfare in Leeds, targeting companies that have been involved in Workfare alongside other groups. And we've also, we've taken a lead on zero-hour contracts. We're opposed to kind of lower rates for young people because, you don't get if you're a young person, you don't get a discount on your gas bill, your electricity bill, your council tax or anything like that.
Right.
You have to pay the same rate as everybody else, so why should we be paid less than everybody else? The idea was to try and, take up these issues, try and do something about it. Now, what's happened since then is that youth unemployment reached 1 million, but then didn't go any further because of the introduction of, on a much wider basis than previous, of zero-hour contracts, of temporary contracts, and so on, and Workfare, of course, as well.
Yeah.
So our focus has become more around those issues of demanding, not just demanding jobs, but demanding real jobs paid with living wage, and that which people can build a life around.
You said that you're against Workfare and against zero-hour contracts, so you're fighting those. Because some people, obviously usually the Conservative government, say, zero hours contracts are good because they give flexibility, or Workfare is good because you shouldn't get anything for free. What are the reasons your group's against those things?
Well, with Workfare, people are doing actual jobs, and there's instances in companies such as Argos and I think B&M Bargains as well, where there's people who've been doing full-time jobs who've been sacked and then replaced by people on Workfare who are paid dole money. We think that if companies have got work to do, then they should be offering people proper jobs. And that's the be-all and end-all of it for us. They should give people a contract for those hours and pay them properly. With zero-hour contracts, then it's it's slightly different. There's a lot of talk, as you said, about it being better for people, being flexible for people, and so on. But really, I think you've got to look at who are the groups that it's supposed to be flexible for. With students, how much better would it be for students if instead of being forced into a zero-hour contract job, somewhere that's nothing related to what they want to do in life, they could actually volunteer with an organisation doing law, they could volunteer with a law firm. If they're doing criminology like I did, then they could volunteer with a probation service, or something like that. Those options could be there for people, but like for me, I couldn't do any of that when I was at uni because I was having to work to pay for my living costs.
Yeah.
And surely it'd be far better for people who want to work to be able to work, and people who are trying to train for something to be able to concentrate on training for that. We shouldn't be trying to use up every single hour of people's day. In Britain, we've got the longest working hours in Europe. People have a right to leisure time.
So why do you think it's been so easy for the government to essentially fiddle unemployment statistics without people saying, hang on, obviously something's not right here? Because they got, that was a key point for them in the run-up to the election. They were saying, unemployment's down, and a lot of people are responding to that. But if you look anywhere past the surface level, it's kind of a bit of a logical fallacy. How do you think they've managed to get away?
Well, they've gone on the figure of creating 1,000 jobs a day, but as I said on an interview on the demo yesterday, if you create 1,000 jobs and they're all zero-hour contracts, well, actually people could have absolutely zero work from that. But the possibility's there for people to actually have no jobs within a few weeks of that because employers don't need them anymore. So there's no stability there for people, and that's the thing. And I think a lot of people see that, but one of the problems in the election is there wasn't really a properly organised opposition that was challenging them on that. You had the Labour Party that were talking about austerity light and therefore not really fundamentally doing anything different. And then you had, your more radical parties such as the Greens and the SNP who talked about being against austerity, but then when they've been in power anywhere, then they've carried out austerity measures, saying there's no alternative to it. But the thing is, when you look at kind of what we've got in society, then Britain's quite a wealthy country. There's £120 billion in tax that's not collected every year. We're going to spend £100 billion on renewing Trident. There's all sorts of figures I can pluck out of the air here. We're going to spend £60 billion. The PFI hospitals were £12 billion to build, but it's actually going to cost us in repayment £72 billion.
And that was a Labour initiative as well, wasn't it?
It's both governments.
But and then the Tories carried it on, didn't they?
The Tories set it up. Almost all of them were signed up under Labour, and then the Tories, of course, have carried it on. And it's been extended actually under the course of Labour government and the Tories into all sorts of other areas. So, there's PFI fire stations, PFI police stations, PFI schools.
Didn't know about that actually.
The PFI is private finance initiative, and it generally costs about 4 or 5 times more than that as actually building itself. Right. And the reason why governments have gone for it is it makes it look like they're keeping spending down, but actually all they're doing is putting it off for much longer, and actually we're subsidising companies' profits. One of the problems is that the whole narrative around the deficit hasn't been challenged. In terms of, the Tories feel is that it was overspending on public services, that's why we've got to make lots of cuts, and that when really the reason we've got a deficit is because of bailing out the financial sector, in 2007, 2008, which was, necessary on that basis if you accept the logic of a capitalist system which requires ever larger profits to be produced at the top of society. And unfortunately all the main parties do that. But, like for me and other people in Youth Fight for Jobs, we're not, we think capitalism is a failed system. It fails ordinary people. We can't get jobs, we can't get, it's sustainable, we can't get decent jobs. I think that's what we've got to put forward. We have to put forward an alternative that says, well, instead of just kind of having these sort of crumbs off the table, because effectively what the election was a competition of who could give working class people the best crumbs off the table rather than any sort of alternative. And we have to say, key sectors of the economy should be brought into public ownership. The wealth that's locked up there should be used for ordinary people instead of being siphoned off the tax havens, instead of going in the shareholders' back pocket, instead of being frittered away on stuff. The banks, the key productive industries, the energy companies, the transport infrastructure and all that should be brought into public ownership. It should be democratically run by ordinary people. Then we could actually draw up a plan of how we develop society to create jobs, to create, real jobs for people that, where people can contribute. And we could do loads of things with that. We could reduce the working week. We could provide affordable eating places, childcare, things like that. That would, take a lot of the stress and strain off people. And that whilst not, whilst also opening up people's creativity. In terms of what they want to produce, what people can do. And there's probably loads of people who have ideas and stuff they want to do, but they just can't get the money or the time to be able to actually do it.
I mean, obviously, we all feel that protesting is important, and it's important for us to all have our voice heard. But in this modern climate, do you think it's effective?
I think that's a good question to ask, given the response of George Osborne to the protest on Saturday was, well, you can protest all you like, we're going to carry on doing it. But the reality is that the government has U-turned on a whole number of issues. In the last government, they were going to privatise the forests, they were going to privatise the land registry, they were wanting to cut back pensions and pay further than they've done. So people's resistance has forced them back. But what we kind of need to see is something much wider than that. We have to see people occupying services that are under threat or factories that are facing closure. And that's happened in Britain. Like in 2009, there was a whole series of car plants that were facing, car parts plants that were facing closure. For Visteon, a company that's been spun off from Ford, and they occupied, and they got better redundancy terms and pension terms than they were going to be due. So, that sort of resistance has happened, but also coordinated strike actually I think is key. Working people deciding we've had enough of this, all coming out together on the same day to send a real big message, and not just as a one day, that's it, we march everybody up the hill and go home, but actually a sustained period of things. And from that, that kind of process will give people more confidence to take part in protests and campaigns, but also it gives people the opportunity to create democratic structures to decide how those things are organised. And those sort of structures can become embryos of how society should be run instead.
Okay, so final question for the people that are watching this at home. What's your advice to them on sort of how to organise themselves? Or is there any? Would you recommend joining a group? What would you say to them about taking their own action and doing their own sort of protests and organisation?
I mean, if people are interested in sort of what Youth Fight for Jobs have been campaigning on, we meet the first Wednesday every month, and they should get in touch with us about that. I'm sure you can post the links at the bottom of the video. We've got protests coming up. We've got protests tomorrow, and so on. And we'll be doing stuff on that campaign and supporting the wider anti-austerity movement anyhow. But obviously it's important for people to do stuff in their area. There could be people watching this where there's nothing going on in their area. And that, or there's stuff where, there's maybe not a group that's doing that, or they want to get the mates together and do something locally in their, in their school or in their village or town or whatever. I think the first thing to do is to say to people, like, try and pull together other people that are interested. Have a meeting somewhere, meet in a cafe or a pub, or like just sat in the street somewhere. I mean, that's what the Occupy camps did, was they just gathered in the Leeds one gathered outside Leeds Art Gallery and just talked about what they were going to do, and then came back a few days later and occupied City Square. So, that's a way of doing it. But try and pull together other people that are interested. There's various things. I mean, if you want to call a static protest, the legal requirements for that are just, that you inform the people who own the land. If it's public land, just go ahead and do it. And that, but, for marching, then officially you've got to give police permission. But there's other there's campaigns where people have just marched from place to place, impromptuly, and just, we just say to people, be aware of, like...
Is there any big risk with doing that for anybody watching?
Well,
if you
technically,
march without doing that?
That is officially illegal and that, but I've been involved in marches like that, so, and I've never been arrested or anything, but the main thing I'd say to people is do it, is get out there on the streets, do stuff. Like, if you don't feel confident about having a protest, run a campaign style, get a petition together on something, but campaign on things, try and change things, because if we don't try and fight this, then we're guaranteed to lose, but if we do fight, then we can win.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Iain. Everybody at home, I'd take note of what he said. He knows what he's doing. I've seen him speak in person. He's really good at it. He really knows what he's doing. So that was really good input. Thank you, Iain. Yeah.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And thanks to DRK Creative for filming this.
Thank you.